I'm very pleased to welcome this exciting audience to an exciting presentation. We're sitting under the auspice of the Berman Jewish Policy Archive at NYU Wagner. Maen Rashid Areikat was born October 12, 1960, in Jericho in the occupied West Bank. Prior to his appointment to Washington, Mr. Areikat served 11 years at the Negotiations Affairs Department of the PLO in Ramallah. Mr. Areikat previously took part in Palestinian-Israeli negotiations at Beit Hanun in Gaza, in Taub in Egypt in 1996, in Jerusalem in 1997, and was an official member of the Palestinian delegation to the Wye River negotiations in 1998. I asked Mr. Areikat to please pick up at some point on a charge that he gave the last audience I heard him speak at the Israel Policy Forum, where he said that there's an important role for the American Jewish community in promoting the peace process. So if you don't get to that within your 20 minutes, we're going to ask you about that. But without further ado, I present to you Ambassador Maen Rashid Areikat.
Thank you, Dr. Cohen, and it's my pleasure to be here today. I think we are witnessing some interesting events that are taking place as we speak. But even before these interesting events took place, the Middle East has always been an interesting area to follow. And I remember when friends always ask us, friends, Palestinians, Israelis, international, how do you have the energy to keep going on? I mean, with all what is going on, it's very depressing, and nothing is moving forward. And our answer always was, it's never a dull day. We always have something happening every day that we need to either follow or catch up with. And I think today is a clear example of how fluid the region is. And it's also a clear example that trying to wait more before we can resolve this conflict could be something that we all will regret in the future. And we, at least as Palestinians, when I say we, I mean us Palestinians, have always come with a clear message to this country. I remember before the election of 2006 in the Palestinian territories, we came to this country, and the administration and officials will ask us, what can we do to help you? And our answer to them was, we need to empower those on the Palestinian side who are seeking a peaceful resolution to the conflict, who believe in peaceful coexistence, who believe in the two-state solution. And you can do a lot as an administration to help those forces on the Palestinian side, and to be able to talk to the Israeli government. It was led at the time by Prime Minister Sharon, about taking certain steps and measures on the ground to show the Palestinian people that there is change. After all, President Abbas ran for elections in 2005 on a platform that called for a peace agreement with Israel, that called for maintaining security and order in Palestinian areas. And it was a clear political message to the Israelis that, we want to have peace with you. We don't want to continue this conflict forever. And same way, leaders and administrations are accountable to their peoples everywhere in the world. We are also have a people to be accountable for. And you're looking at a process that started in 1991 with the Madrid Peace Conference. When I was introduced, the Orient House was mentioned in Jerusalem as being the headquarters of the Palestinian negotiating team to the Madrid Peace Conference. I mean, when George Bush, the father, convinced the Israelis and the Palestinians and the Arabs to go to Madrid in 1991, people were hopeful that this could soon lead to an end to the Arab-Israeli conflict and the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. But unfortunately, almost 20 years after, in October, it will be 20 years for the Madrid Peace Conference, we are not close to concluding this conflict. And I think it should be an opportunity for all of us to look back at the past 20 years and try to learn from the lessons, both the negotiation lessons and the relationship that we had with the Israelis and they had with us. I think that definitely we are in need for a different approach to resolve the conflict. And we should abandon the management crisis efforts and get to the real work of conflict resolution here. And this is exactly what we expect from the United States as being an important player and from the international community. We cannot continue to pursue the same failed policies that we have pursued for 20 years that did not produce anything. And any talk about interim arrangements or agreements also is an effort to divert attention from the real issues. I think in order to realize peace and in order to satisfy the needs, interests, and concerns of all parties, we have to sit down across the table and put everything on the table, all the issues without any exceptions. The issues that in 1993, the PLO and Israel both agreed to discuss as part of a permanent status agreement, namely Jerusalem, settlements, borders, security, water, and refugees. And any attempts to try to reach transitional arrangements or interim agreements will only prolong the conflict. When we signed the Oslo Accords in 1993, we said that let's deal with the issues that we can solve now and defer the most difficult issues until later. And now I think even the Israelis believe that that was a major mistake. True that both sides were not ready to conclude an agreement on such important issues at the time, and they thought maybe an interim agreement would create confidence and trust between the two sides to enable them in 2 or 3 years to sit down and deal with Jerusalem and the refugees and the settlements and the borders. But unfortunately, the events that took place on the ground held both Palestinians and Israelis hostages to extremists on both sides. And, you know, that led, of course, to the failure, in my opinion, of the process. Oslo, I know, came under attack from many, especially on the Palestinian side, but it was the implementation of Oslo that we had difficulty with, not the agreement itself. Each side interpreted Oslo to their own liking, and the agreement itself was ambiguous enough to provide leeway for Palestinians and Israelis when they come to interpret it. And I think we both failed in the implementation of Oslo, and actions and taken by extremists on the ground completely aborted the process in the 90s. When I say that, I talk about the assassination of Prime Minister Rabin in 1995, which I think was a turning point in Israel's quest to make peace with the Palestinians, and of course the campaign of violence and counter-violence and suicide attacks that took place during the 90s by certain Palestinian factions also led to the erosion of confidence in this peace process. Now, where do we stand today? I wanted to give you just this background because it's not only the regional developments that have been taking place recently in the region that is prompting the Palestinians to rethink about this overall approach. We have been thinking about that for quite some time now. And any leadership in order to maintain its credibility, they have to deliver to their own people. And we told our people that we are in the business of negotiations to try to end the Israeli military occupation and to establish a sovereign, independent Palestinian state that can serve Palestinians and help them achieve and realize their national goals and national ambitions. And today, we are confronted with the difficult questions. I mean, what have you as a leadership done to the Palestinian people? Not only that, but also the fact that Israel did not provide a breather to the Palestinian leadership with their continued policies imposing facts on the ground, namely the continued building of illegal settlements on the occupied Palestinian territories. And the issue of the settlements, to many, is not very clear. Why are the Palestinians so opposed to the settlements? It's because the ordinary Palestinians see the settlements every day. They drive around from a village to another or from town to another. Something they can see in their own eyes, and they see these settlements being built on the very same land that Israel is supposedly expected to turn over to the Palestinians. So it doesn't take a genius to figure if they want to have peace with us, if they want to give us back this land to build our Palestinian state, why are they continuing to build these illegal settlements on our land? And the fact that the settlers themselves, who unfortunately represent a small but really very vocal percentage of the Israeli society, have always been a source of tension with the Palestinians. Most of the attacks in the West Bank, not in the last few years, but before, used to target settlers in the West Bank. Same thing, many Palestinians have lost their lives in confrontations with settlers who never hesitated to use their arms to shoot Palestinians, under the pretext of self-defense, which contributed to the increased tension in the West Bank. And therefore, we just have requested simply from the Israeli government over the past few months that while we are negotiating, while we are trying to conclude this agreement, and a few months ago we felt that we really had an opportunity to do that, why can't you refrain from building settlements? Why don't you, extend that so-called moratorium, which we all know was not perfect, and it was not a total freeze on settlements, so that we can have additional time to try to achieve something that is really of great significance to both peoples to end the conflict? I mean, what is more important, to try to appease this small segment of the Israeli society, or to try to reach peace with the people with whom you have been fighting over the same land for, I would go to at least 60 years, 63 years. And I don't want to go back to 100, but it's not fair to say 44 years. I mean, isn't that a more important objective goal, to end the conflict, reach peace, provide Israel with security and stability, and the whole region, will be able to live in peace and security with each other? Unfortunately, the Israeli government chose settlements over peace with the Palestinians.